I never meant to start a war that night. But when the billionaire's fiancé slapped that waitress, the entire restaurant froze. I realized I was the only one who remembered what it felt like to be treated like garbage. So I stood up. And the moment I grabbed her wrist, everything in my life changed forever. The sound of a hand striking flesh is something you never forget. It cracked through the air, louder than the clinking silverware, louder than the soft jazz playing in the background. It echoed off the hand-painted ceiling of the most expensive restaurant in the city, silencing the entire room in a heartbeat. I watched frozen, as a billionaire's fiancé slapped a young waitress so hard the girl stumbled back into a serving cart. But she wasn't done. When the manager tried to intervene, she grabbed his uniform, her knuckles white with rage, and tore the fabric right off his chest. Everyone stood there, wealthy businessmen, socialites, people with power, completely paralyzed by fear. My 6-year-old daughter, Angela, dug her fingernails into my palm, trembling against my leg. "Mommy, I'm scared," she whispered. That fear in her voice triggered something ancient in me. Memories of my cruel in-laws, of being treated like dirt, flooded my veins like ice water. I snapped. I didn't care about the money, the power, or the consequences. I just walked forward. What I did next didn't just shock the restaurant. It made a billionaire fall in love with me. I'm Valentina, and this is my story. Before we get into the chaos, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you need to see how this ends because the revenge I got wasn't just sweet. It was life-changing. Let's begin. My name is Valentina, and I'm 28 years old. I have pale skin that burns easily in the sun and jet black hair that I usually keep tied back in a messy bun because who has time for styling when you're trying to survive? I'm a single mother to Angela, the brightest, kindest little girl you'd ever meet. If you saw me walking down the street in my worn-out sneakers and thrift store coat, you wouldn't look twice. You'd see a tired woman, maybe a bit ragged around the edges. And you wouldn't be wrong. I work 2 jobs. Waitressing at a greasy diner during the day and cleaning office buildings at night. It's a grind that grinds your bones down to dust, but I do it. I built this life from absolutely nothing, scraping it together penny by penny. 2 years ago, my world collapsed. I lost my husband in a car accident. But if I'm being honest with you, and I promised I would be, I had lost him long before the crash. Our marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a prison. But the warden wasn't him. It was his family. My in-laws made my existence a breathing hell from the moment I said, "I do." They were wealthy, old money, and they never let me forget that I came from a trailer park. My mother-in-law had eyes like frozen ponds. She would look at me with this specific curl of her lip. Absolute disgust, like I was something she had stepped in on the sidewalk. She called me worthless. She called me a leech. She called me garbage. It wasn't just words. The physical abuse was subtle at first, a pinch here, a shove there. But it escalated. I remember one morning I burned the toast. Just a little bit of char on the edges. She walked into the kitchen, saw it, and slapped me across the face with a dish rag so hard it left a welt. She once came into my room and ripped my favorite dress. A simple floral thing I'd saved up for. Right off the hanger. She tore it to shreds in front of me while I cried, telling me it was cheap trash that embarrassed the family. My husband, he was a ghost in his own house. He would just turn up the volume on the TV or walk out of the room. He was terrified of them. When he died, they didn't even wait for the funeral flowers to wilt. 7 days. That's how long it took them to throw Angela and me out on the street. They told me I was bad luck. They looked at their own granddaughter, an innocent 4-year-old child, and told her to leave. "We don't want your poison here," my father-in-law had said, tossing my suitcase down the front steps. I remember standing on that sidewalk, holding Angela's hand, feeling like my chest was going to cave in. But I didn't break. I looked at my daughter and I made a vow. I swore I would never let anyone treat us like garbage again. I swore I would bite back. That brings us to 3 months ago. The night that rewrote my destiny. My best friend Cynthia is the kind of person who shines like the sun. She had been planning her 30th birthday for months and insisted, absolutely demanded, that I bring Angela to this ultra-exclusive restaurant called the Gilded Lily. I tried to say no. A glass of water at a place like that costs more than my hourly wage. I told her I didn't have anything to wear, that Angela would be bored, that we didn't belong. Cynthia wouldn't hear it. She knew how hard I'd been working, how I hadn't had a night out in years. She covered the bill in advance so I couldn't argue. Val, she said, grabbing my shoulders, you are coming. You deserve to feel like a human being for one night. So I agreed. Mostly for Angela. I wanted her to see that the world could be beautiful, not just struggle and bills. The evening of the dinner, Angela was vibrating with excitement. She put on her little yellow Sunday dress, the one with the daisy embroidery. I pulled out the only formal thing I owned, a deep blue dress I'd found at a consignment shop. It was old, but it fit my frame well, and against my pale skin and black hair, it actually looked decent. When we walked into the Gilded Lily, Angela gasped audibly. It was like stepping into a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers that looked like dripping diamonds, velvet chairs, soft piano music drifting through the air. I felt that familiar itch of insecurity, that feeling that everyone knew I was an imposter, but watching Angela's eyes widen made it worth it. We were seated near the window. Cynthia had invited 2 other friends, and for the first hour it was magical. We were laughing, eating food I couldn't pronounce, and just breathing. Angela was telling Cynthia about her drawing class, waving her fork around. I felt my shoulders drop an inch. I felt normal. Then the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was palpable, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. A man walked in first. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. He had dark, intense eyes, but he was looking down at his phone, tapping away furiously. That was Daniel Miller, the tech mogul, the billionaire. But as commanding as he was just the shadow cast by the woman behind him, Vanessa Hartley. She swept in like she owned the building, the block, and the city. She was undeniably beautiful in a terrifying way. She wore a white silk gown that clung to her curves, and diamonds glittered at her throat. But her face was twisted into a permanent sneer. She looked at the hostess, the waiters, the guests with supreme boredom and contempt. This was a woman who had never been told no in her entire life. The staff immediately went into high-alert panic mode. I watched the color drain from the hostess's face. She practically bowed as she led them to the prime table in the center of the room. A young waitress, her name tag read Sandra, was assigned to their table. Sandra couldn't have been more than 22. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. I watched her hands trembling as she approached them with the menus. Vanessa didn't even look at her. She just snapped her fingers in the air. A sharp, dismissive sound. Ice water. Now. And if it's tap water, I will have you fired. I felt my stomach churn. It was the tone. That specific frequency of entitlement that I knew so well from my in-laws. Daniel, the billionaire, just sat there, still glued to his phone, completely oblivious to the venom his fiancée was spitting. He didn't check her behavior. He didn't even seem to be present. "Mommy," Angela whispered, leaning into me. "That lady is really mean." "I know, baby," I murmured, stroking her hair. "Just ignore her. Focus on your pasta." But we couldn't ignore her. Vanessa was making it impossible. She sent the wine back 3 times. She complained that the air conditioning was too loud. She said the lighting was making her look pale. Every time Sandra came to the table, Vanessa found a new way to degrade her. Calling her slow, calling her stupid, making her apologize for things that weren't her fault. Then came the moment that stopped everything. Sandra brought a fresh bottle of sparkling water. She was so nervous her hands were shaking visibly. As she poured the water into Daniel's glass, the bottle clinked against the rim. A tiny splash, maybe a teaspoon of water, landed on the white tablecloth. It didn't touch Vanessa. It didn't touch Daniel. It was just a wet spot on the linen. Vanessa exploded. "You incompetent idiot." Her voice shrieked through the restaurant, cutting through the piano music like a jagged knife. Every conversation in the room died instantly. Forks froze halfway to their mouths. "Are you blind?" Vanessa stood up, towering over the shaking waitress. "Or are you just too stupid to do a simple job?" Sandra's face went paper white. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'll change the clothes immediately." "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix my evening," Vanessa screamed. And then, without hesitation, she swung her hand. Smack. The sound was sickening. She slapped Sandra across the face with full force. Sandra stumbled back, clutching her cheek, tears instantly springing to her eyes. She looked small, helpless, and utterly humiliated. I felt Angela go rigid next to me. My heart started hammering against my ribs, not a fast flutter, but a heavy, dangerous thud. "You trash," Vanessa hissed, wiping her hand as if touching Sandra had infected her. "People like you are only good for scrubbing floors. You're garbage." Garbage. That word. That specific word. A manager rushed over. His name tag read Peterson. He was an older man, distinguished, trying to keep the peace. "Miss Hartley, please," he said, his voice trembling slightly but professionally. "There is no need for violence. We will handle this. Please sit down." Vanessa turned her predator gaze onto him. "Handle it? You hired this moron. That makes you incompetent too." "Ma'am, I must ask you to lower your voice," Peterson said firmly. "Don't you dare tell me what to do," Vanessa spat. She reached out and grabbed the lapels of Peterson's uniform jacket. With a violent jerk, she yanked him forward. The sound of fabric tearing ripped through the silence. She ripped the pocket right off his jacket. Peterson gasped, bringing his hands up to cover his torn uniform, his face flushing deep red with shame. He was a man in his 60s, being manhandled by a spoiled brat in her 20s. "Fire her," Vanessa demanded, pointing a manicured finger at weeping Sandra. "Fire her right now and get out of my face, you useless old man. Or I will buy this building and evict every single one of you rats." That was it. That was the moment. I looked at Sandra, holding her swelling cheek. I looked at Peterson, clutching his torn jacket. And then I looked at Vanessa's face. That smug, satisfied look of someone who thinks they are untouchable. The restaurant dissolved around me. I wasn't at the Gilded Lily anymore. I was back in that cold hallway with my mother-in-law. I was feeling the sting of her hand on my face. I was hearing the word garbage over and over again. I was remembering the nights I cried myself to sleep, wishing anyone would stand up for me. Wishing someone would tell me I wasn't worthless. But no one ever came to save me. I had to save myself. And I had to save them. My hands started shaking, but it wasn't scary anymore. It was pure distilled rage. Cynthia saw the look in my eyes. She grabbed my wrist. "Val, no. Don't do it. She's crazy. That's Daniel Miller's fiancée. They'll destroy you." "Let them try," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, low and steady. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but I forced them to move. I walked between the tables. The silence was so deep I could hear the rustle of my own dress. Every eye in the room swiveled to me. I was just a woman in a thrift store dress with messy black hair, walking toward a billionaire and a monster. Vanessa had her hand raised again, looking like she was about to shove Peterson. I didn't stop. I walked right up to her, reached out and grabbed her wrist in midair. My grip was iron. All the years of scrubbing floors and carrying trays had made my hands strong. Vanessa's head whipped around, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at my hand on her wrist, then at my face, as if she couldn't process that a commoner had dared to touch her. "Let go of me," she hissed. "Who do you think you are?" "That's enough," I said. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I spoke with the quiet authority of a mother who has seen too much. "You're done." "Excuse me." Vanessa tried to yank her arm back, but I held on. "Do you know who I am? I'll have you arrested for assault. Get your dirty hands off me." "I don't care who you are," I said, stepping closer, forcing her to look me in the eye. "You don't get to treat people like animals. You don't get to hit people just because you have a diamond on your finger. You peasant." Vanessa shrieked. She wrenched her arm free with a frantic jerk. "I'll ruin you. I'll make sure you never work in this town again." "You can try," I challenged her. Vanessa's face turned a violent shade of purple. She raised her hand, palm open, aiming for my face. I saw it coming a mile away. I knew exactly how bullies moved. I caught her wrist again before she could make contact. And then I did the one thing I promised myself I would do if I ever met a monster like my mother-in-law again. I didn't just hold her. I slapped her back. It was a sharp, stinging slap that turned her head to the side. The gasp from the restaurant was like all the oxygen being sucked out of the room at once. Vanessa stumbled back, clutching her cheek, her mouth hanging open in absolute stunned silence. She looked at me with genuine terror because for the first time in her life, she wasn't the one holding the whip. "Call the police," I said, my voice ringing out clearly. "Go ahead. Let's show them the camera footage. Let's show them the welts on this girl's face. Let's show them the man you assaulted. There are 50 witnesses here." I turned to scan the room. Did anyone else see what happened? Slowly, hesitantly, a man at a back table stood up. I saw it. Then a woman near the door. I saw it too. She attacked the waitress. One by one, people started nodding, murmuring their agreement. The tide was turning. Vanessa looked around wildly, realizing she was losing control. She turned to Daniel, who was finally looking up, his phone resting on the table, his expression unreadable. "Daniel!" she wailed, rushing to his side and grabbing his arm. "Daniel, look what she did. She assaulted me. That crazy woman hit me. Call your security. Destroy her." This was the moment. The billionaire was the wild card. If he sided with her, I was finished. I held my breath, standing tall, refusing to shrink away. Daniel Miller stood up slowly. He was taller than he looked sitting down, intimidating. He looked at Vanessa, clinging to his arm like a victim. Then he looked at Sandra, weeping silently into a napkin. He looked at Peterson, trying to fix his torn uniform. And finally he looked at me. His dark eyes locked onto mine. I expected anger. I expected him to call security. I expected him to yell. Instead, he gently peeled Vanessa's hands off his arm. "No," he said. Vanessa blinked, her fake eyelashes fluttering. "What? What do you mean no?" "I mean no," Daniel said, his voice deeper and colder than I expected. He stepped away from her, putting distance between them. "I saw everything, Vanessa. I wasn't looking at my phone the whole time. I was listening. And I was watching. She hit me." Vanessa screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She defended a defenseless girl," Daniel corrected her sharply. "You assaulted an employee. You humiliated a manager. You acted like a monster." He turned to me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked impressed. "I apologize," he said to me. Then he turned to the staff. "I apologize to both of you. What happened tonight is unforgivable." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a checkbook, and scribbled something quickly. He ripped the check out and handed it to Peterson. I glanced at it. It was for $10,000. "For the damages," Daniel said. "And for your dignity." Then he walked over to Sandra. "I will personally ensure your job is safe. And if you want to press charges against Ms. Hartley for assault, my legal team will represent you. Pro bono. Free of charge." Vanessa gasped, looking like she had been slapped a second time. "Daniel, are you insane? I'm your fiancé. You're supposed to protect me." Daniel turned back to her. The look on his face was final. "We're done, Vanessa." "What?" Her voice was a whisper. "The engagement. It's over." He reached for the ring on her finger. She wasn't even wearing it, I realized. It was sitting in a box on the table because she had complained earlier that it was too loose. He picked up the velvet box and pocketed it. "I've ignored your behavior for too long because our families do business together. I thought you were just high maintenance. But this isn't high maintenance. This is cruelty. And I don't marry cruel people. You can't do this." Vanessa stomped her foot like a toddler. "My father will destroy your merger. You need the Hartley name." "I don't need anything that comes with strings attached to you," Daniel said calmly. He signaled to the security guards who were hovering by the entrance. "Please escort Miss Hartley out. If she refuses, call the police. You'll regret this." Vanessa screamed as the guards approached her. She looked at me with eyes full of pure hatred. "And you trash. I will find you. I will make you pay. Get her out of here," Daniel ordered. As they dragged a screaming Vanessa out of the restaurant, the room was deadly silent for 3 seconds. Then someone started clapping. It was Cynthia. Then the man at the back table. Then the whole restaurant erupted in applause. I felt the adrenaline crash. My knees buckled. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Daniel was there in an instant. He didn't touch me, but he hovered close, his hand ready to catch me if I fell. "Are you all right?" I nodded, taking a shaky breath. "I think so." "Mommy." Angela came running from our table and buried her face in my stomach. "You were like Wonder Woman." I wrapped my arms around her, kissing the top of her head. "I'm okay, baby. It's okay." Daniel knelt down, ignoring his expensive suit trousers on the floor. He looked at Angela. "Your mom is the bravest person I've ever met," he told her seriously. Then he looked up at me. "I don't even know your name." "Valentina," I said. "Valentina," he repeated like he was tasting the word. Would you mind if I joined you? I don't think I want to eat alone tonight." I looked at Cynthia, who gave me a frantic thumbs up. "Sure," I said. We sat down, and for the next hour Daniel Miller wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man who was tired of the fake world he lived in. We talked. Real talk. I told him about my husband passing, about the struggle, about working 2 jobs. I didn't tell him about my in-laws yet. That felt too heavy. He listened to every word, his eyes never leaving my face. He told me he felt trapped in a life where everyone only wanted his money. When we left, he insisted on driving us home in his town car. He walked us to the door of our small rundown apartment building. "Thank you," I said, "for backing me up." "Thank you for waking me up," he replied softly. He handed me a business card. "If she tries anything, and she might, call me directly. This is my private number." I took the card thinking I'd never use it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I showed up to my waitressing shift at the diner. The manager, a sweaty man who hated confrontation, wouldn't look me in the eye. "You're fired, Valentina," he mumbled. "What? Why?" I demanded. "We got a call. Someone said you're violent. Said you attacked a high-profile client at a club. We can't have that kind of liability." It was Vanessa. I knew it. I went to my second job that night, the cleaning gig. My key card didn't work. Security met me at the door. "Contract terminated," they said. "Complaint filed about theft." She was trying to starve me out. She wanted me to beg. I sat on the curb outside the office building, tears stinging my eyes. I had rent due in 4 days. I had to feed Angela. I pulled out the card Daniel had given me. My hands were shaking as I dialed. He picked up on the first ring. "Valentina." "She fired me," I choked out. "She got me fired from both jobs." "Stay there," he said. His voice was hard as flint. "I'm coming." He picked me up 20 minutes later. We went to his office, a skyscraper that pierced the clouds. That night, I watched a billionaire go to war for me. He had his legal team on the phone within minutes. They contacted the diner and the cleaning company, threatening lawsuits for wrongful termination based on slander. Both managers called me back within the hour, begging me to return. But Daniel shook his head. "No, you're not going back there." "I have to," I argued. "I need the money." "Come work for me," he said. "I need a liaison for my charitable foundation. Someone who actually understands what people go through. Someone with backbone." He named a salary that was triple what I made at both jobs combined. I stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I haven't stopped thinking about you since that night." Things moved fast after that. The security footage from the restaurant leaked. Daniel's doing, I suspected. It went viral. #Justice for Sandra started trending. The Hartley family business took a massive hit as public outrage grew. Vanessa went into hiding. Daniel became a constant in our lives. He wasn't just buying us things, he was present. He came to Angela's school plays. He helped me fix the leaky sink in my apartment. We started dating slowly at first, then all at once. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. I felt cherished. But the final test came 2 months later. I was at my apartment cooking dinner. Daniel was on his way over. There was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I froze. It was my in-laws. They stood there looking older but just as arrogant. My mother-in-law was wearing a fur coat that probably cost more than my car. "Valentina," she said, flashing a fake, sugary smile. "We heard the news. You're involved with Daniel Miller." I gripped the door handle. "What do you want?" "We want to make amends," my father-in-law said, stepping forward. "We were too harsh. We want to be a family again. We want to see our granddaughter." I saw right through them. They didn't care about Angela. They smelled money. They knew I was close to a billionaire and they wanted a piece of the pie. "No," I said firmly. "You threw us out. You called me garbage. You don't get to come back now that I'm doing well." "Don't be selfish," my mother-in-law snapped, her mask slipping. "We are her grandparents. We have rights. If you don't let us in, we will sue for custody. We have better lawyers than you." "Actually," a deep voice came from behind them, "you don't." Daniel stepped out of the elevator. He looked furious. He walked past them and stood next to me, placing a protective hand on my waist. My in-laws turned pale. "And Mr. Miller," my father-in-law stammered. "We were just—" "I know exactly what you were doing," Daniel cut him off. "Valentina told me everything. How you abused her. How you slapped her. How you tossed a grieving widow and a child onto the street." That's a misunderstanding," my mother-in-law tried to lie. "If you ever come near Valentina or Angela again," Daniel said, his voice low and dangerous, "I will bury you in so many lawsuits you won't be able to breathe. I will expose exactly what kind of people you are to every country club and boardroom in this state. Do you understand?" They looked at him, then at me. They saw the united front. They saw the power. And for the first time they looked small. They turned around and scurried to the elevator without another word. When they were gone, I slumped against Daniel. He held me tight. "They can't hurt you anymore, Val. I promise." 6 months later, Daniel took us back to the Gilded Lily. He rented out the entire restaurant. It was just me, him, and Angela. We sat at the same table near the window. But this time there was no fear. No anxiety. After dessert, Daniel got down on one knee. Angela squealed with delight. "Valentina," he said, holding out a ring that shone brighter than the chandeliers. "You showed me what real strength is. You saved me from a life without love. Will you marry me? Will you let me be the father Angela deserves?" I looked at this man who had wealth beyond measure but whose greatest gift to me was simply his kindness and his protection. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." We were married in a garden ceremony that spring. Sandra, the waitress, was there. She's managing one of Daniel's cafes now. Peterson was there too. Cynthia was my maid of honor. Vanessa Hartley moved to Europe to escape the shame. My in-laws never bothered us again. I still have nightmares sometimes about the old days. But then I wake up, and I see Daniel sleeping beside me, and I know I'm safe. I realized that night in the restaurant that being garbage isn't about where you come from or how much money you have. It's about how you treat people. And by that definition, I was never garbage. I was gold. And if you are listening to this, sitting in a dark place, feeling like you have no voice, stand up. Speak out. You are stronger than you think. And your life can change in a single heartbeat. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And share this with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. Have you ever stood up to a bully when everyone else was afraid? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice, love, and turning the tables. Until next time, remember, fear is a reaction, but courage is a decision. Choose courage.